Hello guys, my name is Rajita. I am your biology trainer for today. Today we are going to be looking about a concise concept of the animal kingdom. Now in this session we are going to be learning about the classification of the animal kingdom, that is namely the chordates and the non-chordates. Now in this session we are totally going to be dealing about the non-chordate classification. The chordates, as you all know, has the euro, hemi and cephalochordates in them, whereas the non-chordates have 10 phyla in them, namely Porifera, Ctenophora, Coelenterata, etc. We'll get into that a little later. Now, after a brief introduction about all of these and the non-chordates and the 10 phyla, we're going to be working out a few example problems in the NEET and other competitive examination perspective. Now, this topic is a quite important topic in the NEET and the other competitive exam perspective. You could easily expect up to 20 or 25 marks. These actually, are basic concepts that you need to know, which is why we are going to be taking a closer look at all of these phyla and the other classifications, and we're also going to be looking at how to approach a problem given. Now, as I've already mentioned, the non-chordates in the animal kingdom have 10 phyla in them, and the chordates have euro, hemi and cephalo, 3 subphyla in them. Now let's take a closer look at the non-chordate classification. But before we get into the classification of the chordate and the non-chordate, we need to know the difference between the chordates and non-chordates. Now what are chordates? Chordates are those animals that have a backbone or a spinal cord. Okay, spinal cord per se, not as a structure but a supportive backbone. Okay, we are all chordates. We are advanced chordates with a separate vertebral column. Non-chordates are those animals that have no supportive backbone. Okay, these are smaller animals, or smaller animals in the sense of an evolutionary pattern. Now, the non-chordates, as I've already mentioned, are divided into 10 phylum. The phylum 1 to phylum 10 are given in the order of evolution. Okay, now meaning the phylum 1 is the least evolved compared to phylum 10. Now, the phyla that are included in the non-chordates include Porifera, okay, Coelenterata or Cnidaria, Ctenophora, Platyhelminthes, Aschelminthes, Annelida, Arthropoda, Mollusca, Echinodermata and Hemichordata. Let's look at each of them in a little bit more detail. The first phylum being the phylum Porifera. Now, what does the name Porifera suggest somebody is that the body of these animals are full of pores. Okay, that is a characteristic of this phylum Porifera. Porifera are those animals that have numerous or a large number of pores on the outside surface of their bodies. They are diploblastic animals. What do I mean by diploblastic? Diploblastics are those organisms that have only 2 germ layers in them. In this case, mainly the ecto and the endoderm. The ecto being the outer covering, the endo being the inner covering. Okay, these are sessile organisms. Sessile are those organisms that are attached to a substratum. Okay, and these are acoelomates. Per se, these are acoelomates because they do not have a definite digestive tract. Therefore, there is no coelom that begins in the mouth and ends in the anus as opposed to higher animals. Therefore, these are acoelomatic, but these have something called the spongocoel. Okay, here the coel meaning the cavity. Okay, so spongocoel is a sort of a coelom for the Porifera, but these come under acoelomates. Okay, now, and these have a radial symmetry. What is the difference between a bilaterally and a radial symmetrical organism is that radial symmetry gives you 2 equal halves if you cut through any direction across the body, whereas the bilateral symmetry gives you 2 equal halves only if cut along a longitudinal axis, like as in case of humans, or a horizontal axis. Okay, so that is the difference between bilateral and radial, and these are radially symmetric organisms. Before we get into the details of the cells that are present, as I have already mentioned, there is an outer and an inner layer. Now the outer layer of sponges have many pores, as I have already discussed, and they also have some cells that are responsible for the sensory function as well. Okay, and the inner function, the cells that are present in the inner part is not present on the outer part. Okay, and they are called pinacocytes. Pinacocytes are present on the outer, and the inner is lined by the choanocytes. Now there's no need for you to know the exact function of these, but do know that pinacocytes actually help in the sensory function and choanocytes help in digestion. And in between there is a mesohyl layer that has mostly collagen or spicules that form the skeletal system of the poriferans. Now this is the basis on which the poriferans are classified as well, but let's get into that a little later. The choanocytes, as I've already mentioned, are responsible for digestion. Okay, the digestion in sponges are mostly intracellular digestion. Now when I say intracellular digestion, it is because these have a cellular grade of organization. When I say cellular grade of organization, it means the organism's body has an aggregate of cells, okay, and they do not have a functionally coordinated cells. Each cell has its own metabolism, therefore each cell takes up the food that the choanocytes are taking in, and each cell digests its own food. Therefore the digestion is intracellular, meaning within the cell. Okay, now we have already come across the function of choanocytes. The mesohyl layer, as I have already mentioned, has collagen, has spicules, and apart from that it also has phagocytes. Okay, phagocytes are responsible for phagocytosing the excretory products produced by the sponges. Okay, and also some foreign particles that may have gotten into the body of the sponge, because the sponge body is hollow. Okay, it also may have amoebocytes that are between the pinacocytes and choanocytes. These are some cells called the totipotent cells. These totipotent cells are those that can convert into anything they want. They can differentiate into either choanocytes or pinacocytes, or even amoebocytes, depending on the requirement of the organism. Okay, now the skeleton of the sponges is what is responsible for their classification, and it's the basis of their classification. The skeleton of the sponges, okay, they are usually composed of rays like astral rays. Okay, astral rays, spicules. These spicules may either be of siliceous nature or made of calcium carbonate. So based on the composition of these spicules, the classes of the poriferan are given, and these are namely calcareae, okay, next demospongiae, okay, calcareae, demospongiae, euplectella type. Now calcareae are those spicules that are made of calcium carbonate. These are sturdier sponges. Okay, one of the examples for this includes cycon. Now demospongiae. Now demospongiae are those sponges that are economically important. Demos means important, economically, okay, and spongiae are sponges. Now demospongiae have euspongiae, okay, spongilla. Now it might do you good to remember these examples, because they are going to pop up in any of the MCQs from this part of the chapter. Now there's another speciality of spongilla. Most of the poriferan members are marine. Okay, none of them are freshwater except for spongilla. Okay, this is the only exception that exists as a freshwater sponge rather than a marine form. Now the euplectella type is that has a siliceous spicule, and one of the examples includes euplectella, also Hyalonema, Hyalospongiae. Okay, hyalo meaning glass. Okay, it is a glass like sponge. So this is the classification of the poriferan members. Now let's move on to the coelenterata or cnidaria. But you may be wondering, I did not tell you anything about the life cycle of these sponges. Okay, the poriferan members have a larval life stage. Okay, they have something called the indirect development. When I say indirect development involves the formation of a larva. Okay, in this case the poriferan members produce two kind of larvae called the amphiblastula and the parenchyma. Okay, these larval stages, they become sedentary after a while and they mature into adults. So this is only one of the animals which is exclusively larval stage involving. Okay, some others give you budding and all that, but it is very rarely seen in sponges. There are only something called the gemmules that are seen in sponges rather than asexual budding. And the life cycle again involves the fertilization of the ova, and then ova by the sperm, and then the formation of these larvae and them into adult formation. Now coelenterata or cnidaria is the second phylum of the non-chordata. Now there is a reason why they are called cnidarian members. Okay, so before we get into that, you need to know that these are diploblastic animals. Diploblastic meaning, again, they also have only an ecto and an endoderm, and then there is a mesenchymal space which is filled by this connective tissue called the mesenchyme, and also some muscular epitheliomuscular cells in the mesenchymal layer of the cnidarian body. Now coelenterata is sac-like organisms. When I say sac-like, it means they have a hollow sac-like structure, okay, and only an outer covering and an inner lining, and then they move about. They are either pelagic, they are usually sedentary, or even pelagic for that matter. Most of them are pelagic, okay, and they are free swimming. Some forms are even free swimming. Now there are three kinds of cells in this phylum. These are polyps. Polyps are nutritive zooids. Zooids are animal cells. When I say coelenterata is in the polyp stage, it means it is in the asexual stage and its job is to nurse the cells. Okay, then comes the thesiocytes. Okay, thesiocytes are also nursing in function. Okay, polyps, and then there is something called the medusoid stage. Okay, medusoid stage are the sexually reproductive stages with the ova and the testis, and which are responsible for production of larvae in various forms. Now the coelenterate body, as I told you, has an outer and an inner layer. The outer layer usually has testicles. Okay, there is only one aperture called the mouth. There is the same thing serves as a anus or the mouth. Okay, the same opening. Okay, therefore these animals are said to have an incomplete digestive tract. Okay, only from the phylum Ctenophora do we see a sort of completely digestive tract. Now the coelenterata have a incompletely developed digestive tract. Therefore there is only one pore that serves as both the mouth and the anus. Now these take in the food by something called the tentacles. Okay, tentacles have sticky cells to them, and they produce something like a swirling movement. Okay, that takes up the food from the outside environment into this. Okay, because these are mostly water dwelling. Okay, these are either marine or fresh water, but they are mostly fresh water. Okay, now the inner lining of the coelenterate body also has digestive functions, and the digestion here is also intracellular. Now what is interesting about this phylum is that the presence of cnidarian nidoblasts. Okay, now nidoblasts are those cells that are meant for both offense and defense. Now offense is when it is being attacked by an enemy, the animal, it will sting. Okay, it increases this, deposits a sort of a neurotoxic venom into the enemy's body. Now that was for defense. Okay, that was for defense and offense. Actually offense is hunting as well, because when once this animal has to hunt for a prey, it will again do the same thing. The nidoblasts actually sting the animal, okay, thereby depositing venom in it and paralyzing the venom, and then later it consumes the animal. So coelentrates, even though their organization is relatively simpler, okay, this sort of has a cellular and a tissue grade, both of these organizations, but these are slightly advanced as they can hunt, because they can they're pelagic, they can move from one place to another. Now the coelentrate also has, as I've already mentioned, three types of cells: one the sexual, one the nursing cells, and one the asexual. Based on whatever the state of the cells that they are in, these coelentrate are actually classified, but let's get into that little later. And now we've talked about the digestive system. The excretion is also, as I've already mentioned, through the anus, which is the same opening as the mouth, okay, and there are incurrents, okay, that are produced inside the animal's body that are responsible for throwing out of the excretory waste and taking in of the food, and tentacle also aids in this particular function. Now these organisms also have an indirect development. Indirect development is involvement of a larval stage, okay, Physalia larva and everything. These are actually they have an interesting life cycle. Once the vegetative phase is attached onto a substratum, it becomes the medusoid stage after maturing, okay. They have a sexual maturity which is reached at the medusoid stage, and later they detach off and they become pelagic, okay. That is the speciality of the cnidarians. Now the classification of the cnidarians includes hydrozoa, okay, anthozoa. Now hydrozoa includes animals like the obelia, the hydra, okay, and the anthozoa includes Aurelia. Now, as most of you may be familiar with, obelia and hydra are freshwater organisms, and Aurelia is the marine organisms, which is also called the jellyfish. This is the common jellyfish, Aurelia, okay, and they have a structure called the medusa because they are in their medusoid stages. Now this medusa is responsible, as I already mentioned, for sexual reproduction, and one of the larval stages of the Aurelia is the Physalia larva or Euphyra, which is the smaller version of the Aurelia, and then they attach onto a substratum, they grow into a polyp, and then later again mature into a medusoid form, they detach, and then they become free swimming, okay. That is the life cycle. Hydrozoa, anthozoa are the two main classifications of the coelentrata or the cnidaria.